What does God's word say about obesity? Is obesity a sin? And why don't we hear very many sermons preached on obesity or gluttony, as the Bible may call it? Um, and why can't obese people just lose the weight already? It is a struggle, no doubt. And joining me today to talk about this very subject is a longtime friend and brother in Christ, Paul Chapman. And how are you doing this morning, Paul?
I'm doing great. I guess I'm your only obese friend. I don't know, but no, I'm doing great. I appreciate the invitation to speak with you.
Oh, absolutely. No, the reason that I wanted to have you on is because you are one who is willing not only to talk about it, but to help us to understand the struggle better and how to encourage those struggling with it, and then how you can actually encourage others to better serve others in the kingdom. And so I think that this is just a unique discussion to have. And if you don't mind me saying, you're quite a unique brother in not only what you bring to the table, but the way you bring it to the table. You're humorous, and yet you're making a significant point that I think is helpful for everybody to consider, because this is a real struggle, obviously. But as I said in the introduction, it's not often a struggle that people like to talk about or bring up, maybe for fear of hurting somebody's feelings or, being inappropriate or something like that. But I really appreciate you coming on. And I know you've done a lot of work in the past on this.
Well, I bring it to the table, and I've done it too many times over the
Was
over the
that a bad
years. So,
metaphor?
so
But that's just a taste of the kind of humor that Paul brings to the table. Sorry about that, but no. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. I guess I know that you have a YouTube channel that's kind of focused on your weight loss struggles, your ups and downs, and things like this, and other things.
yeah. Well, since I'm here to talk about obesity and talking about myself. I'm going to kind of start from the beginning and just kind of
Certainly.
quickly go through and kind of hit those points concerning my weight, where I was on the scale over my lifetime. And I'll try to do that quickly. But, I wasn't born a morbidly obese baby. I was born normal size. But I was born into a Christian family. We were if the doors were open at church, we were always there. We were involved in every activity. My dad was a deacon, then he was an elder for several years, and by the time I got to middle school, I was considered at that point probably I was definitely overweight or obese. Uh, but I was very active physically and in sports. I played football in middle school and through high school and everything. And by the time I graduated high school and was playing high school ball my senior year, I was definitely morbidly obese. Which, by the way, the definition basically for that is being 100 pounds over more than your ideal weight, whatever that is. So I was would have been real close to being 100 pounds overweight, but I was fast for my size and very active, so didn't affect me a whole lot in that sense. But then as I eventually went on to college, and in my 20s, I kept gaining weight and gaining weight. And so then by the time then I got out of college, and I had a couple of jobs, worked at a water treatment plant. There was nothing that really excited me, or I was content with. And in college, I majored in law enforcement, criminal justice. Never went into that field, mostly because of my weight, really, because I was getting bigger.
Hmm.
But I finally decided when I was 29 years old that I wanted to go to preaching school. And at that time, that was something that excited me. Now, I never made the commitment to be a full time preacher. I just wanted, in depth knowledge of the scriptures and some tools to help me, be able to deliver that message of the gospel. And
And that's where we first met, right? That
that's
was
right, was at Brown
30 years
Trail.
ago.
Yeah, oh man. And so I was at my highest weight at that point when I went to
Mm,
preaching school. I was coming in at 515, 520 pounds. But once I got there and started my that in-depth study and everything, I was able to stop gaining weight. I mean, in other words, my trajectory from that point on, as far as weight's concerned, was downward. And I've
okay.
never been that close to 520 pounds ever again. But so uh, after school, after preaching school, I did go up and preach full time at a little congregation in a little town in Wyoming. I did that for 6 years. Came back as youth minister for the congregation where I grew up. Did that for about 4 years. And in all that time, all those years, my weight, even though it's a downward trajectory, it was a roller coaster,
Uh-huh.
and and then my dad, who I think was thinking about preparing for retirement in the family business, he started a sign business in 1959, and so I had worked in it at various times over the years, of course, and just a family business, and he was wanting me really to come in and learn how to run the office. My oldest brother had been with him for years in the business, and he knew all the sign stuff. He was the sign guy, sign mom.
Right.
And so he just wanted me to run the office. So I did that. So I got out of any kind of full time preaching. I haven't returned to that since then. But then in 2012, that was probably around 2008 or nine. In 2012, my father passed away. In 2015, my mother passed away. In 2016, well, 2015 was when my brother, we found out he had cancer, and so
Hmm.
2016 is when we had to close the doors of our business. And
Okay.
I wasn't near, I was high on the scale, the weight scale at that point in 2016. And I knew, nobody's going to hire me, not in an office, not anywhere probably. And so I wanted to get money coming in as fast as I could. And I knew really I could get a job and pretty quickly and easily because they're always desperate for substitute teachers. So
Uh-huh.
I did that and did that for a few years. Eventually became an educational aide for a few years, and now I'm a bus driver. I've been doing that. This is my first school year to drive a bus, and so I have been. I'm still, as you can tell, I'm still on that roller coaster ride. But
Uh-huh. I remember in school you were, of course, dealing with the weight loss or the weight problem, and as you mentioned, you were at your heaviest, I guess. And of course, you would ask for prayers on that from time to time in the school. And obviously, being in school doesn't lend itself to to losing weight. You don't exercise
true,
much. Nobody does. We're in class all day long,
right,
and
right,
such, and then we're studying all night long. So obviously, that was not ideal for losing weight. But you mentioned you moved to Wyoming following graduation, and that was where you then kind of got started in earnest, right? On a definite effort. And the reason I bring that up is because you actually wrote a book. You wrote a kind of a small book called "Bears Don't Eat Fat People," and
put a lot of thought in
this
that title.
well, it is. This is the shows the real Paul. He wants to do right. He wants to be obedient to God, which would include being on this effort to lose weight. But it also shows your humorous side. But it's thought provoking. And what one thing that I always appreciated about you, Paul, is that you've never played the victim. You've never tried to ask for sympathy. You've always accepted the responsibility. And just as an example of that, your opening paragraph in chapter one says, "What do fat people and starving people have in common? Both are obsessed with how and when they will score their next meal. Both will lie, cheat, and steal in order to satisfy the immense craving for food. But the great difference between a fat person and a starving person is motive. For one, the next meal is a matter of survival. For the other, it's merely a quick fix for an overwhelming addiction. And so I've always appreciated that about you, that you take responsibility and you're willing to admit where you're weak or where you need help and such. And is that probably one of the most important things for people struggling with this particular problem to do?
Yeah, and I guess probably any problem. I mean, you have to admit it. You have to see it. You can't deny it, or you're never gonna get better or really truly be able to deal with it. And
Mm-hmm.
so, it's I think by that time, I was in my early 30s, and I was motivated, especially I think, like I said, I was motivated through school, and that was probably because of my deeper study of the Bible, and
Mm-hmm.
knowing what God expected of me, and but I had a different outlook. I had a different mindset, and I knew that I had to lose weight and get healthier. Um, but my attitude as far as the shame around it changed somewhat, because up until then, all those years, even from when I was a kid and gaining weight, I was very ashamed of it. All
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to do was become a hermit or a recluse.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to go into public places and be around people really very much, and so that I started kind of coming out of it, and then being in the mountains. I mean, that's just those, and you've been there. You were there. Y'all came up and visited
That's
me.
right.
You and the lovely Mrs. Brown, and you know, it it's kind of inspirational, God's
Mm-hmm.
creation, and you want to get out there and be physically able to do things. I wanted to go backpacking. I eventually kind of got into that, but so yeah, my mindset was changing, and I had begun to make some greater efforts
Mm-hmm.
toward losing weight by then.
Yeah,
Uh,
I know that. Oh, go ahead.
no, no, I was. Go ahead. What are you about to say?
Well,
Go
I was
ahead.
just going to say, I know that most people, or really anybody who has struggled with anything in a serious way for any amount of time, will say that one of the first things you have to do is have an entire kind of a life change. It can't just be a spur of the moment decision thing. I think I'm going to have to lose a couple of 100 pounds, something
Right,
like
right,
that. No,
exactly.
you've got to immerse yourself and change your surroundings and all of that. And I think that was probably one of the things you were after by moving to Wyoming in the mountains, and like you just alluded to, to get involved in the backpacking, which kind of shows the origin of the title Bears Don't Eat
Right,
Fat
right.
People. And there's a humorous story that I think includes, the thesis of where this whole do bears eat fat people kind of thing comes
Which, by the
from.
way, let me tell you,
Yes.
it it's not necessary. Most of everything I write in that book is true,
Oh, I know
especially
it.
especially about my feelings and most of the experiences. But there's some stuff in there that is strictly fiction to kind of tie the book together, the idea of the
Okay,
book.
okay.
So
Well,
just
tell
wanted
me
you to
about this one. Tell me
okay.
about this passage. You say, in all my research of those who have been eaten by bears, none of the victims were fat. Some may have been considered slightly overweight, but there was no evidence that any were grotesquely obese. How odd. Was it an old, what is that old joke? How do you keep from getting eaten by a bear? Well, you take someone along that runs slower than you. Well, that sounds smart to me. History, I would think, should be filled with fat people falling victims of such raw boned cunning. Oh, sorry about that. This is the kind of thing you run across every page in this book.
Don't
Um,
apologize.
it says not only are they not good at foot races, but fat people are also not adept at climbing trees. Out of all the incidents I read about, why did bears not eat fat people? Could it be that bears simply don't eat fat people? Was such a theory so far fetched? Yes, it seemed illogical. After all, I couldn't picture a bear running past a 5 course meal to get to a toothpick. However, the evidence supported my hypothesis that no truly fat person had become bear refreshment. So, what was the answer? Well, clearly there was only one thing to do. The theory must be tested. and so and so that led to your journey out into the woods or out into the mountains in order to hopefully come across a bear and see if it would attack you.
So the
But
whole going out into the woods, I mean, I that whole chapter of when I go out into the woods and camp and stuff, all that is fiction, pretty much. Every bit of it's fiction. But because I had to, because I wasn't actually going to go do that. I mean, I couldn't really do it like
well,
that.
then not only are you a great writer, you're a great fiction writer too, because that part was
I
just
was
absolutely hilarious.
but that's kind of one of the things that I would have mentioned, or if you had brought it up about this book, and you did,
Uh-huh.
was it kind of goes to the title of the book: bears don't eat fat people. Of course, that's the question. But and in the end, I basically say it's true. Because and really think about it. You've heard stories, you read about them over the years, and in the news, they never talk about the size of the person. I mean, that really doesn't so it's they would never probably say it, but it's true. And why and I kind of say, which is in the book conclusion, in a sense, is that fat people, they don't live life. I mean, you don't fat people don't get out and experience those kinds of things. So they're not going to get eaten by a bear because they're nowhere around bears. They don't, we
Hmm.
don't go in the woods because physically we just don't have, the physical ability to do it.
You're mentioning that is was a profound place in your book that brought you from laughing to almost weeping because of the seriousness of the struggle, and it just shows again your ability to write in such a way that brings those kinds of emotions out. But was it a true story about you going to the doctor and the conversations you had with your doctor?
That was true, but it didn't happen in Wyoming. I said it there where I go, I think,
Okay.
to Lander, Wyoming, but it
Yes.
happened in Killeen, where
Okay.
I grew up and live. But
Well,
yes,
let me read this because
okay,
here's an example of a poignant moment. You said this was when you're sitting in the doctor's office with him. You said, right then, I decided I'd had enough of being fat. I had some serious physical problems, but none of them were irreversible. The doctor was right. It would take a lot of hard work, and I was more determined than ever to do it. I was tired. Tired of the fear, tired of the pain, both physical and emotional. I was tired of letting down my family and friends. I was tired of being alone and lonely. Tired of merely existing. Doc, have you ever heard of a fat person being killed by a bear? I asked. Looking puzzled by the question, he said, No. Do you know why? I asked. Thinking I was ready with a punchline, he smiled and said, No, why? Because fat people don't live life, I said. His smile turned to a frown, and I left the room. That was an important moment, I think, in your book where it really does kind of hit to the heart of one of the things that maybe people don't think about when they have obese friends or people struggling with that kind of a problem is how it can zap your life, zap your emotional well-being and such. Uh, and so maybe that's one of the reasons we don't feel comfortable talking to other people about it. I don't know, but
yeah.
I that's the kind of thing I appreciate about your willingness to bring those things out.
I think uh, in writing that section there, when I first go in the doctor's office and I'm waiting on him, um, I'm sitting on his stool, you know,
Yes.
because the chairs had arms on them, and fat
Hmm.
people and chairs with arms don't work very well. And so, and I remember he came in and said something. I was in his stool, and I don't remember what I wrote in the book, but I got a little upset. I was offended, you know, by what he said. And but then it hit me that, well, I'm sitting in his chair. I'm sitting in his stool. So I don't remember exactly how that went, but it's one of those things that, why am I offended? It's not his fault. It's not anybody else's fault. I'm the one who put myself in here and in this situation, So why am I getting upset about it, or especially at someone else?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. That you tell that on page 87 in your
Okay.
book. You asked the doctor, "What must I do to bring down my triglycerides so I won't need a pill?" And sounding rather hopeless, he said, "I don't think you will ever bring them down that much." I suddenly grew angry. He didn't even know me. How dare he judge me that way? What I needed and expected was a positive plan of action and some encouragement to abide by it. Who was this skinny doctor to look down on me, thinking I hadn't the willpower or the self control required? And then I realized I was sitting on his stool. Here was this 500-pound blob on his stool because I couldn't fit in anything else. Who could blame him for thinking the situation was hopeless? Just poignant moment.
Well, thank you. It's uh, you know, like I said, there's no reason to be upset about that, because I put myself there, and it takes willpower, it takes all those things. But I tell you, I've had doctors that have, and where that anger kind of comes from, I guess, was I have had doctors over the years that basically say or think it's impossible to lose weight or to lose it and keep it off. Now, I think it's a high percentage of people who lose weight and then gain it back or gain all of it back, but
Okay.
not everybody does,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's kind of resentful. Still kind of today. I'm like, that's not the best bedside manner. I'd rather you help me. But see, they see this, and especially now and over time, as there's more and more people in our society who are morbidly obese, and they see people failing all the time. And I
Mm-hmm.
tell you, when I am doing well, when I have a regular physician and I'm doing well at losing weight, and I've been, losing 50, 60, there's been a few times in my life I've lost 100 to 150 pounds. And when a doctor sees that, most of them get excited about that. They know
Very
you're
good.
trying, and
Yep.
they want to help you, but they really seem disinterested until they see that in you as a patient, as a person, where you're willing to try to do something for yourself, you know
Hmm.
and most doctors,
Yeah.
I think, they've seen it too many times where people aren't going to do what they say.
Sure.
So
Yeah, and I guess it would stand to probably stand the investigation that most people would just rather have a pill or rather have something that makes it easier because it's a difficult journey, ups and downs. Yeah, you make no bones about it in your book that the bottom line is diet and exercise, and probably primarily diet, right? That
yeah.
will be the key to weight loss. But that of course is the struggle. Would you still say that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, really, losing weight and getting healthy is probably 90% what you eat. Really,
90%. Yeah.
exercise, that's good, for you and everything. But and it's good to have a body that's a little bit more toned, a little bit more flexible, and all of that. But to actually get the weight off, it's more about what you eat than anything else.
Hmm.
So, unfortunately, as far as I was talking, I was mentioning, or excuse me, you were reading in there about not fitting in and how I made that comment, and that's obviously still the case, but our society has changed in a lot of ways. So back
Mm.
when I started getting obese and morbidly obese, uh, it was different. Well, I was morbidly obese before morbidly obese was cool. There weren't too many of us around
Yeah, I
back
was getting
then in
ready to
the
say, were you one of the only ones in like in your class
I
in your
don't.
school?
I I do remember one other kid in school. There was a second who was kind of more. He was probably morbidly obese, but there's only a couple of us that I
Yeah.
can remember in high school.
Yeah.
And but it's the clothes, uh, and even the big and tall chains, which there weren't very many stores back then in the early and mid 1980s.
Hmm.
Their sizes, they didn't have big enough sizes. They did kind of for me, but I was 4X. was kind of the size they had, maybe 5X if you were lucky. Thankfully, in a
Hmm.
town nearby, we had a mom and pop shop that, they had gargantuan clothes. And over the years, as I
Right.
got bigger, that's where I went. But and then there's um, theater seats. There was restaurants. You just you know and vehicles, and that's can still be a problem today because there's a lot of small vehicles. If you need someone to pick you up, you got to find out what vehicle they drive. If you don't know,
Yes,
because you're not just. Which, by the way, you might have seen in the news that TikTok.
I have seen.
Did you
I
see
thought
that?
about that.
I
Yeah.
think it's a setup. I think that was a setup, but
Really.
I don't blame the guy for not letting her in. And I
Well,
think he was
yeah.
nice
Well,
about it because
sounds like
it's
it.
true. You're gonna you could
Hmm.
ruin things, but even going over to people's homes, and from a Christian's perspective and a preacher perspective, if you're going to go study the Bible with somebody, that's a fear that you have or visit for
Sure.
some reason. Is, are they going to have furniture I can sit in? How embarrassing is that going to be? I
If you
remember,
broke a
I don't know if
chair.
yeah, or if you had to go to the bathroom and broke their toilet seat. Oh my goodness! I think I did that one time. I broke a toilet seat out of all these years. So, but you're
I'm
sitting there
surprised you
sweating through
didn't
it.
include it in your
Yeah,
book. That would have been
I talk
perfect.
I talk about bodily functions in there
Yeah,
at
you
one
do a
point,
little.
but I don't mention breaking toilet seats. But I don't know if you remember Louis Anderson, the comedian.
Hmm.
He was a morbidly obese comedian. He's passed away now, but he had this great joke for years and years. Heard it years ago. Yeah, he said, "Well, whenever I go visit people, he said they try to direct me over to the concrete furniture, but he said I head straight for the wicker. I sit in the wicker furniture. So yeah, that's what it's like. So
Oh
there's a
my.
lot of ways we don't fit in
Sure.
physically, and so nowadays, I mean, I do appreciate. I'll have to admit, there are things, theater seats, restaurants, they want your business, so they're going to try to, forgive the pun, but
Cater. Hmm.
cater to fat
Hmm.
people, and but I think some of it though has been uh, um, basically fat social justice organizations that have pushed some
Sure.
of it.
Hmm.
But hospitals, I think it's a good thing because there's so many fat people now, and
Hmm.
they have bigger wheelchairs, bigger beds, bigger cups, for
Right.
checking your. So
Sure.
so that's good, but I don't think because these organizations don't want any real stigma on being fat,
Hmm.
and that's not good for society. I don't think we don't want to ever be mean. Obviously, we don't want to be
No.
crude and rude and hurt people's feelings. Just by being mean in
Right.
some way. But no, there needs to be some type of stigma, I think.
Yeah. So, what would you say? What is obesity, or how would you define it?
Well, um, so obese. When you look at the definition of obese, the older definitions, I have a couple of old dictionaries, American College Dictionary, an old Webster's, and they'll say basically obese is excessively fat, person, human
Kind of
excessively fat,
general.
corpulent, which means obese.
Ah.
So that's the definition. And I
Hmm.
think that's a great definition. I think that's what it is.
Hmm.
But you look today and there's all kinds of definitions. And they've even included disease, that obese is a disease. We can talk about that in a minute, but the way we determine, you know, if someone's excessively fat, they've always, for years, have had the height weight chart. They now have the mass body index, the MBI, or is that what it is? Yeah, I think BMI,
Body mass
body
index.
mass index. Thank you. And so I think if you're 25, you're considered overweight. If you're a 30, I think then you're considered obese. Now, I don't know how they determine that, definition.
Hmm.
And there's other ways that they do it trying to figure out the percentage of body fat on a person, and they measure the waist and stuff like that to try to figure out. None of them are perfect. And by the
Hmm.
way, especially with the BMI chart, um, other countries, that's for the United States, those numbers. So I think it's Asian countries that have lower numbers and you're considered, overweight or obese,
Hmm.
so we can, they're not perfect standards, but I think that's a guide that we can go by in our
Okay.
society. So it's kind of like with foul language and bad words. If our society considers it that, then I think the Christian, we should take that into consideration. But um,
And
so
so, what does the Bible have to say about it? Like,
so
it doesn't. It
I
wouldn't
think
define that.
no, exactly. There's not the Bible doesn't have a height weight chart or BMI. So we have to look at other things. We have to look at really, self control, and like what is it? Second Peter chapter 1. Add to your faith, virtue, to virtue knowledge, and knowledge self control. Passages like that, for one thing, and self control. What's the Greek? Let's see. I may have it here. Let's see, to hold oneself in. Oh, and
Hmm.
and from Galatians 5:23 and self control there.
Fruit of
But
the Spirit.
yeah, the right. And Thayer says about the Greek word, the virtue of one who masters his desires and passion, especially his sensual appetites.
Ah.
So so I think
Well,
things
self-control
like
seems to
that.
be at the heart of it. No, like,
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, Jesus was accused of being a drunkard and a glutton. And so those two kind of went together. So the idea,
Right.
you don't you drink alcohol, you're excessively drinking alcohol where you become a drunkard, and you're excessively eating food where you become a glutton. So maybe that's at the heart of that. So maybe that's the center of the issue for as far as God is concerned. So it's not, well,
Yeah.
this person has body fat on him, and so he's in
Right.
sin. The sin comes from a lack of self control, a lack of maybe being slothful. Would that be
Right.
maybe the
And I
exercise part of it? I don't know.
that right that would fit in there too. In studying gluttony, which I haven't really done, for a long time, but I remember, and you had mentioned earlier about, not we don't really talk about obesity and
Yes.
stuff today, and that's especially true, and this is what you may have been referring to. But in the Lord's church, you don't have too many, at least back for many many years. It may be changing now to some degree. It's becoming more of it's becoming a bigger topic all the time. Seems like, but but you know, but we haven't been. And when I was in preaching school, I had missed a couple of days, and while I was gone, one of the instructors for a particular class, the students in his class, had each student pick a particular topic, biblical topic, to write a research paper on. And so I found out when I got back that my fellow students graciously picked my topic for me, which was
Oh
gluttony.
no.
So I don't know if you remember that or if you voted on that or not,
No,
but
I don't remember that.
that was
Now I
fine with me.
That was an ethics class, and I'm trying to think if we were in that one together or if I was in a different, because we were 6 months apart. So there were
Were we?
6 months where but anyway, but I do remember that ethics class.
I thought you came in the same time as me and Dustin
I
and
was going to say, you guys had like 15 students
okay.
come in at one time, and we had
No, no, no,
five.
no, 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 no.
Yeah.
I was there. I came in the same time you did. There were six of us. Right after us was the 15 group. So I was in with you. That we came in right at the same time. Yep.
Okay. All right.
So
Well, so I must have been part of the charge of saying, okay, I know what Paul.
that's that's probably so is your idea. But anyway, okay. So that was fine with me. And so the other students were telling me, said, "Hey, don't worry, he gives you a packet with all kinds of real thick packet of information, articles and research stuff, and for previous students that had written their papers are in there, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff." So I'm like, okay, great, great, great. So I go in his office and he hands me this. I thought it was empty. I said, There's nothing in here, So I open it up and there's two items in it. There is a brief article on gluttony by Billy Graham and a copy of the Food Pyramid. That was it, you know.
Oh
And
boy.
I'm like, wow. So that told me a
S-
lot right
Yeah,
there.
just
I mean,
people
there
just
weren't
don't
even
address
past
it.
papers, weren't even
Yes.
past papers by anybody.
Right.
So it had not been addressed, and so that's when I started, I guess, my in-depth study, at least at that time, of gluttony,
Yes.
and so I didn't have a whole lot to go off of, but other than the Bible itself, of course, and that's enough. And
Sure.
my conclusion, of course, that gluttonous, it's not in the Bible a whole lot, but it means, I think, in the Greek, it means to eat, a riotous eater, you know. So definitely the meaning of the word glutton in the Bible obviously has to do with eating and eating to excess. But the riotous eater part, I think that fits in to the context, and of course, in every context, it is a negative connotation, of course.
Hmm.
But if I recall, in every context that the word is in, it is lumped together with wine bibber. I think if not every time, just about every time. But it's the context of a lifestyle. So I wouldn't be
Ah.
surprised. And my understanding is it may have been, you know, the same people that were gluttonous were the same people. Maybe a lot of the times that were also wine bibbers. It seemed to be a lifestyle of rebellion, that they
Mm.
reveled in it. It was, they had, you know, um, they were proud of it, and it was just eat, drink, and be merry type of an attitude.
Gotcha.
And so that's why it was so strong to accuse Jesus or whomever else of that kind of stuff, because it wasn't
Hmm.
just that he was over sitting there, you know, and overeating with people. It represented a lifestyle that was a part of. So
Hmm.
that's how I make the distinction in some way. So when
Yes.
I look at myself in my years of being morbidly obese, many times over, I mean, like more than just 100 pounds overweight,
Hmm.
um, I and maybe I'm wrong in doing this, but I don't. I am gluttonous. Is definitely is the eating aspect. I have shown that and done that
Hmm.
many times throughout my life. Um, but I don't have the same attitude about it. I don't. It's not a lifestyle for me in that it's rebellion. I do have shame
Sure.
about it. I do. Um, uh, I'm not content with being fat. There's people that will say, "Well, you're just fat and happy." No, I'm a happy person naturally, I think,
Yeah.
anyway. But I'm not happy and never have been about being overweight,
Hmm.
obese,
Hmm.
And so throughout my life, there's that struggle with the spirit and the flesh.
Hmm.
It's a tug of war, and I've made many efforts to fight, against this addiction that I have.
Is it sometimes a little bit offensive, or uh, somebody tries to say, "Oh yeah, I know, I struggle with eating too much too," and here they are, they're definitely not fat, and as is does it seem like they might be kind of either not understanding really what you're struggling with, or they're diminishing really the issue that you're struggling with? Because I mean, it can be offensive when they try to sympathize with you and they really can't, or they're not struggling with the same thing. I know at one point you can say, well, certainly every human being has to struggle with a propensity, or a particular spiritual battle that they're going through. But again, this is a unique one, just like another one. You could have a whole nother video on a different unique struggle. So
Sure.
can it come across maybe as wrong headed or offensive if there's somebody to try
Um,
to comfort you or encourage you in that way, or is that not? Do you not
Not
take it
really.
that way?
I think maybe years ago, maybe a little bit,
Yeah.
but as I've gotten older, we're all just kind of stupid when it comes to stuff like that,
Yeah.
So I mean, people don't think about it. They're trying to make an effort, and I do the same thing in other ways.
Sure.
Uh, so
Well,
so it
that's one
doesn't.
of the
It's not
reasons
something.
that I've always respected and loved you. You've never had a bad attitude about anything. I mean, like you said, you don't want to be obese and you want to struggle against this until you can't struggle anymore. You know what I'm saying? You'll just go into the grave struggling with this, but you're not angry at other people about it. You're not angry at the world, and that's just refreshing. I think everybody should follow that example for sure.
Well,
Now,
I
you
appreciate that.
started a YouTube channel several years ago called Uncle Paul Persists. Um, and that is kind of chronicling your daily struggles with weight loss. And is that, or is it not really? Every time I see it,
I
which
mean,
I've been
yeah, it
watching it on
is.
a regular basis, it's about that. You have a weigh in, you talk about what you ate that week and such.
Yeah, this April, it will be 8 years old. It's the eighth anniversary of it. So I've
Okay.
had it for a long time, and I started it in 2016 when we closed the doors of our business. Like I said, I gotta. Okay, this is another one of those times. Okay, I've got to find the inspiration to lose weight once again. And I had been watching YouTube videos for a while and trying to just see what people were doing to lose weight and just um, what inspiration I could find to do it myself. And then I finally said, I'm just going to start my own channel. I'm gonna look into that. And
Yes.
so I did, and I thought, like I said, it's been for selfish reasons. From the very beginning, I said that it was to help me, the channels to help me lose weight and get healthier. But along the way, I was inspired and motivated by other people's channels. Maybe I can inspire others as well
Yes.
and motivate others. And so it's it, and I now last year I took a break for a while for most of the year. I think I put up 3 videos the whole year, and I started it back again this year, and then started along with a new effort, to lose weight.
Hmm.
But really, before last year, on average, I put up a video every single week, every Sunday morning. That's when I post them. That's usually I'll do my weigh in, and I haven't weighed maybe half of them or more. I've actually done a weigh in, but I would weigh and then I would do the final edit Sunday morning early and then post it.
Okay.
Um, so now, when I started my channel, first started it, it had a different title. I called it Blessing of Adventure, and that was confusing to people because the blessing of adventure, blessings of adventure, and they never could figure out
Yeah.
what does that mean? And for me, because I talk a little bit in my book that you've pointed out. So many years before, because I wrote that in like 2001 or two, or published it.
Right.
It was published around then, and that's when I was living in Wyoming. It was a long time ago, but I already in that book was kind of talking about the idea of adventure and losing weight, getting healthy to do adventurous things, and I considered it a blessing from God to be able to do that, to live in a world that we can go out and, and into
Yes.
nature and but whatever your adventure is, I had the idea, the dream to maybe through hike the Appalachian Trail, and I mentioned the trail in that book, but just ever so briefly. And but my mother had sent me a book at that time. She loved to read it, but it was A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson, and uh, and it was not real long, I don't think, after it was published, but a lot of people have read it since. And so it was that book. It was just funny, and then also I knew someone, And you know the person too who has through hiked the Appalachian Trail. He did it in like 2000, the year 2000 maybe.
Hmm.
John McKenzie
Okay.
from Brown Trail.
Brown Trail. Yeah.
And and he's now, I think, he's been preaching for a good while, for many years now. But he did it way back then, and I said, okay, well, I know, because he's a lot younger. I think he was like maybe 19. This is after he graduated high school. I think he went and did this, and so those things inspired me. And then being in those mountains, um, and so I wanted to someday do that, or attempt it, and just to show that as a person, a Christian, a human being, but a Christian, that we don't have to be trapped in a lifestyle of morbid obesity. That God gives us the tools in His Word to
Hmm.
conquer this. And 1 Corinthians 10:13. About God not, I think that's the passage. God not giving us more than what we're able to bear, but
Yep.
so but we can deal with it. So God gives us what we need, and so I wanted to be able to show that I could get this weight off of me, because I need to spiritually.
Hmm.
And then we then go do something that was pretty amazing, like a through hike of the Appalachian Trail. So, but whatever your adventure is, if you are at a point, and I've been there, where you're sitting in your easy chair at home, morbidly obese, and just walking out to your vehicle to get in it, you're out of breath, and it's painful. Your first goal may be an adventure of walking 2 blocks away to the city park, or a park that may have some trails. You want to take your kids and your grandkids and do something like that. Walk your dog. Be more of a part of their lives, and not squander the opportunity, and memories that
Yeah.
you would have in doing that. If that's what your adventure is, then that's what it is. So, thankfully, and really through my channel, getting back to my YouTube channel. When I started it, I thought it's good to, we got to make goals, physical goals, something that inspires us to work toward and train toward. And so I had in mind backpacking. I've always wanted to do it, but never was really physically able to. And so on my channel, I started not only showing food. I'd cook some stuff, tell what I was doing, but I kind of got into the backpacking, and buying gear, and then
Hmm.
giving gear reviews. Then going on my trips and taking my nephews on a couple or more of those trips. And and then I was doing pretty well, losing a good bit of weight, and I thought, you know what? I was in a position in life where, I was a substitute teacher. My parents were gone, and I'd sold my house, and with a little bit of inheritance, sort of, I had a
Hmm.
little bit in the bank account, and I thought this may be the time to attempt a through hike of the Appalachian Trail. You know,
Okay.
uh, and so I started working kind of toward that, and I failed miserably, but I
Hmm.
surprised myself in the fact that I didn't know anyone out there. I rented a car and drove out there and just started, you know. And
Yep.
that was the whole idea that I've been trying for a number of years, to be with that adventurous mindset. Just don't, because I've always had a confidence problem, and I think it's from being overweight all these years, early on in life. And you got to be more confident and get out. So I surprised myself when I went to preaching school. I was like, that wasn't just something natural for me because of my weight, things like that. And
Hmm.
but I surprised myself when I did it. I failed miserably. I didn't last very long at all. But I got out there, and I'd been doing stairs and inclines, and trying to and hiking local trails and everything. I did great. My legs were wonderful doing those mountains. I was surprised and shocked. I had done the right
Yeah.
amount of work. My back started giving out on me. That was, you know, there wasn't a quick fix or anything I could do about that.
Gotcha.
But I met people, and that out there then, and through my YouTube channel, where they live out there close. I've been out there. I think I've been there 4 or 5 times, and some of those that I had met, I've stayed within their homes. Some of them hiked with me a little bit. And so, even though I didn't get that adventure, that awesome through hike adventure, I've gone out there and done that, and I feel pretty content with that.
Very nice. That's a great story. Well, at the risk of repeating what you just said, it reminded me of something else in your book that you're making the same point. It is toward the end of your book, and it's kind of how you're kind of applying everything. And you're saying, if I were standing before a congregation of fat people,
Yeah.
what would I say? And you say a number of cliches come to mind, but what's wrong with a good cliche if it tells the truth? And then you give some bullet points of what you would say. And the first one is, the first two really is what you've been describing. Number one, you say, we can do it. We can lose the weight no matter how fat we are and no matter how old we are. We must do it because there's too much at stake. Our very lives are at risk. I don't know about you, but this is my one shot in life on this earth, and I'm going to help make it. I'm not going to help make it a short one. It's not just the health risks, but also being comfortable at the theaters, at the restaurants, at the ball games, experiencing the relationships and creating the bonds that are unlikely to happen by closing out the world. Every single day is a blessing from God and an opportunity to improve. And then your next one is what you elaborated upon. Make goals, not just to lose weight, but also goals concerning things that you want to accomplish as you lose the weight and after you lose the weight. You may not get in good enough shape to do the Appalachian Trail you just mentioned, but we can be fit and we can be comfortable enough to play in the park with the kids and the dog. So, that's great advice. You give a few more: be patient, be courageous, see a doctor, so you mentioned those kinds of things. Don't put it off. But I thought it was interesting because then you move to, what would I say to a congregation of thin people or healthy people? And you really have two main points here. It is, first of all, encourage the obese people in your life. They may start 1,000 different diets and give up on every one, but don't give up on them. Be supportive every time that they're excited and energized to lose weight, because that one time may be the beginning of the final remedy. And then your second point is also empathize with them. This doesn't mean feel sorry for them, but it means trying to understand the challenges they face. And the better that you understand them, the better you may assist in conquering them. So
Brilliant,
I just thought
brilliant.
I thought that was just a great way to, kind of bring it home. And that's what this video was about, is what I was hoping to accomplish, is to bring the issue up, to talk about it, and help people to see that, we all need encouragement in certain ways. And another thing you bring up is, everybody knows one of the ways you need encouragement because it's not something you can hide.
Right, right,
Everybody
right.
may have
Yep.
some hidden struggle in their lives, but with obese people, that can't be hidden. So, I wish I had the page right now I could turn to, because the way you bring it out is so poetic and, and memorable. But anyway, but I just really appreciate, everything that you had to say about it. And I hope that, it's a conversation that maybe we can continue from time to time, bring out new points and nuances of it that will be helpful.
Well, one thing that it might not be as interesting, I don't know, but with our society the way it is, and with so many organizations now that are promoting morbid obesity and stuff like that. I mean, they're putting a lot of political pressure on groups and stuff like that. So just kind of maybe as an antidote, or just to
Hmm.
talk about that, and why for the most part they're wrong, and that's dangerous to do.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
so
Have you ever thought about just reading your book through, like, on a video? I mean, I've seen people do that. We have a brother right now who's reading through one of his books, and it's just a way for people to hear it. But I guess I'm just kind of fawning over the book because not too many people can write quite like you, in my opinion. And I read a lot of
Well,
books.
I
I mean, I'm
appreciate that.
surrounded by them. Now, of course, this isn't a theology book, so maybe that was
Right,
one
right,
thing
right.
that is refreshing to me too. It's telling stories, and it's telling about your experiences and things like that. But like I said, you will definitely laugh through it, and then you'll definitely also be profoundly impacted by some of the things that you bring out
and
about
and I
obesity.
have already actually I read it during COVID when everybody was trapped in,
Oh
and I
boy.
saw that people were reading their books or some kind of book, to kind of pass the time, but they were putting it on their YouTube channels or Facebook. So I did that. So on my channel, Uncle Paul Persists. I mean, you can go back, and I'm not the best
Okay.
reader, but I mean, it's there. Since I don't sell them, I don't have them for sale or anything,
Yeah, I
But
was getting ready to
thinking
say we
maybe
probably ought
you.
to mention that they're not in print. They're not in print anymore, right?
Right,
So
right, yeah,
there's not.
yeah.
So
But but
I've got
thankfully to
one of the
you,
few here.
you actually saved what I had sent you, to say, hey, what do you think about
An
this? For
electronic
me to publish
copy
a
in
little
Word
book. Yeah,
format. Yeah, that you
yeah. So
sent
I
me
might be able to,
and that was
and
from 20,
correct.
30 years ago almost, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I'm shocked. I'm
That's just
surprised.
wonderful.
But
Well, I sure appreciate it, brother Paul, and we'll definitely continue to be in touch, and I'm sure there'll be some time in the near future that we can uh, talk about other things or talk about other nuances of this issue as well. So I really do appreciate it, brother.
well, thank
You
you
have
so much.
any last thing that
I
you would like to
I
say?
thoroughly enjoyed it. No, 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 I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what
I
I was
appreciate
after.
it. Yeah.
Thank you so much.